How's it going, everybody out there today? Happy Wednesday, December 13th. Here we go. Not much longer to go before the holidays. Hope everybody's enjoying their week. It's getting closer to the weekend. And guys, thank you for listening to the last show. We're going to talk about one that goes way back. And again, back to my hometown in Long Island, the Gilgo Beach serial killer. And guys, we have to take this one really, really serious because this is going to go down as one of the biggest serial killers ever. Not only the way it all is taking place, how everything is coming out now with all the witnesses, and how he groomed his people that he knew in the swinging world and the crowd that he hung out with, his friends, how of a close community he was involved in with the police department, his friends. So I think this is going to go back to more than just him knowing about this, and it goes back with his wife as well. Rex's wife was involved more than most people ever could imagine, and now we're seeing that with the DNA that is being linked to a lot of the bodies, the tapes that were found on the body, the tape with her DNA, and we're going to get into that here today as well. And I want to thank too. We're going to have a tape later on from Law and Crime, my guy Jesse at Sidebar, and he also has a guest speaker, Jules, criminal lawyer. He teaches criminal law. And like I said, this is one that we've talked about before, and Rex, the serial killer, alleged killing all the ones that we did catch with. They have four girls, Maureen Barnes, Melissa, Megan, and Amber, that are linked allegedly to Rex with the DNA on Long Island, Gilgo Beach. And there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a trail of people coming out, cops coming in asking for the DNA, and his DNA will match up with other killings. Because there's definitely some that are out there close to his hometown from even 20 years ago and plus. And it'll come out. There's going to be a lot more women that he has killed and stalked, tortured, and just treated like trash. And we all go back to Rex in Long Island and Gilgo Beach. He was addicted to picking up escorts. And he was involved in the swinging world, switching partners. He would hang out at the La Trapeze Club in Manhattan, down close to where he worked, and then invite him to his home in Long Island, and his wife even being there. So again, I've said it before in my other shows, she was involved more than what most people can think, okay? But now the new talk and everything going on with the Gilgo Beach killing is, you got to remember, he's in Suffolk County Jail. He's been there for quite a while, awaiting his trial. And you got to realize there's a lot of people that get arrested every day. So in the section to where the female prisoners are, or inmates, whatever you want to call them, that were arrested for either drugs, escorting, which is prostitution, are there in the Suffolk County Jail, that are now coming out, okay, saying that they have had involvement and actions with Rex Uberman, the alleged serial killer from Gilgo Beach. So now they're questioning hundreds of these women in the Suffolk County Jail that are saying that they could have had any type of actions and encounters with Rex in the past. Because this case has been going on, guys, for a very long time, okay? And it's it all kicked back out because of the Sharon Gilbert case, which I went over before. We're not going to get into that right now. But right now in the jail, we have escorts that have been arrested and now being held in jail for who knows what other charges and other things they might have got picked up on. But recognize Rex, that they have had encounters and dates with him. And you got to remember, he's been in this addicted to this for a very long time. He's been picking up prostitutes for who knows how long, but that was his addiction. He was addicted to the sex, the picking up the prostitutes, going to the swingers club. And now, and 8 years ago, okay, we have a girl, Nikki Brass, who came out. Okay. Nikki Brass has also came out, who is works in the escort business, and came out that she's had encounters 8 years ago with the alleged serial killer Rex, the Gilgo Beach serial killer, and that in conversations on the date, that he would also have conversations on how he loves the true crime world. He loves to watch true crime and just loves true crime, and started talking about, because at that time, remember, the Gilgo Beach serial killer wasn't caught yet, talking about how if he was the killer, what he would be doing, using the burlap tape and just the certain things that he was describing to this escort, Nikki Brass, scared her to death. And she knew that night in her back of her mind that she was there with that night with the serial killer. And she remembers him plain as day now, because you got to remember, a guy that's over 6'7", close to 300 pounds, he is a big, massive of a man. He's powerful. It's an unforgettable person. The face, the way he is, you just don't forget a guy like that. So Nikki Brass has came out and has claimed all these things, at the encounters that she's had with Rex, and the things that he mentioned about the crude crime world that he does love to get involved in. She had chills from the conversations that they were having on their date, and it wasn't a normal date. He hired her as an escort, and then he takes her back. Well, he goes to hotels or wherever, but a lot of the times these parties would always wind up at his house in Long Island with his wife there and attending them. So now in the Suffolk County Jail, hundreds of girls will be questioned to see if they have ever had encounters or have talked to Rex. And of course, they're going to have to come up with some evidence. You know what I mean? I mean, anybody can say, "Oh yeah, yeah," and try to get out of jail, just to have their name out there. Who knows? So we have to make sure that these witnesses are definitely strong, strong witnesses talking the truth. And a lot of things also too are coming out, and because we have a lot of witnesses now, we have witnesses coming out everywhere. So you got to remember, we have the witnesses of the cab driver that I talked about in my other story, who she actually witnessed Karen Vergata running out of a bathroom crying and screaming from Rex. Another witness there. Now they're also coming up with Nikki Brass, witness there. Coming up with these other witnesses that are in the escort business that are actually in the jail now, are going to be coming out. And then we also had, I talked about before, which has been all over, the young lady that we can't mention any names, and also her boyfriend, who was the Brooklyn cop, a detective, who was Rex's very good friend, and also is involved as a swinger. And you got to remember, that girl is a witness as well, because she was invited to a party at Rex's house on one night to have a swinging party, and encountered Karen Vergata running out of that house screaming for help. So we have a lot of witnesses coming out. I mean, more than we can even know of. And that's what happens. And then they have Rex DNA, what was found on the pizza and the tape, and some hair samples of the DNA of his wife now. So we got to remember, Rex's wife, who's also been trying to go and get $1 million deals on the story and selling her story about her husband, she's involved more than most people think. And I really think this is going to unfold to show exactly how many people are involved than just Rex. Okay. That might not have murdered, but did know that he was definitely a killer. Seriously. His wife had to have known, okay? Because her DNA is found on the tape of the bodies and some of the victims. And they took not just hair DNA, they took swab DNA, and it's all matching up to where she had contact with these individuals. So there's a lot more going on only with the Rex involved in these murders. Okay, this has been going on a long time, and there's other bodies that are involved. The four that were discovered and connected to the alleged serial killer is Rex. But now, with all these other girls coming out in Suffolk County Jail, we don't know what the story is there, how many are coming out, what kind of proof they had that they were with Rex. Okay, because guys, we have to realize this guy was a maniac. He was picking up these girls, okay, hiring escorts, and literally hurting them, scaring them. The 911 calls that we played way back with the Shannon Gilberts and all the one, what he did to these girls is just unbelievable. So that's what I'm telling you guys. This is a serial killer that is going to be up there on top notch on him, because he is a manipulator. He knows how to lure them in, and then he gains trust. Remember, this is my determination here. I think he would gain trust on having him at his house, knowing that his wife was there, especially when he invited over these girls to take place in the swinging aspect of this. Okay. And then you got to remember, when you have Brooklyn cops that are your friends and involved in this swinging activity the same way you are, going to the La Trapeze Club to pick up these girls and take them back to his house and have these types of parties. How much did these cops know about the guy they hung around with? Did he know how dangerous he was? Because now all these witnesses are coming out. So we're going to watch a video, guys. Like I said, it's going to be from Jesse over at Sidebar, Long Crime. My buddy's great. He's always on key with everything he puts out there. And we're going to listen on this, because we're going to listen more about the DNA testing that they did on Rex's wife, that could put her there at the scene, or at least knowing that this all happened at the house where Rex was. She was there too, because the hair samples that were found and the DNA. So let's go ahead and share and watch this video, guys, and then we'll talk more. We got Johnny Guns Investigates. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and let's chat about this, guys. This goes back a long time now. Guys, this isn't just one that just happened. This is all unfolding now. They made the arrest. They have him in jail, waiting for his trial. A lot of witnesses coming out. So many different stories are coming out. And now, not only the cab driver, not only the girl who he picked up over to La Trapeze with his friend who's a detective as the witnesses, not only the Nikki Brass who met up with him 8 years ago, that in conversation scared the hell out of her, that she knew right then and there that this guy was a nut job, and that in the back of her mind, she told her friends as soon as she got home, she thinks she might have had a date with the killer. And they all laughed at her. You know what I mean? They don't take anything serious. But unfortunately, this girl, she knew deep in her heart that she met that guy that night, and he scared her so much, she knew that was him. She knew it. So all the things that are unfolding right now, but the most important thing is, how many of the girls in the jail are going to come out now knowing and having involvement with Rex? And now the second part two, his wife. How involved was she? Did she help him with the murders? Let me know, guys. Tell me. There's DNA found, people, not just Rex, her DNA. So let's go ahead. We're going to watch this video with Jesse on Sidebar, and we'll go ahead and talk after the video.
Makes allegations all the time. Sometimes the allegations are true. Sometimes they're not true. Sometimes when they accuse somebody of committing a crime, that person is guilty. Sometimes when they accuse somebody of committing a crime, that person is innocent. So I don't know what is to bear. All I can tell you is he needs to get the presumption of innocence.
New witnesses coming forward, vital DNA evidence, and possible connections to other deaths. Let's delve into some recent updates in the Rex Heuermann Gilgo Beach murders case with Professor of Law Jules Epstein. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, as we know, Rex Heuermann, the accused Gilgo Beach killer, is locked up behind bars in Suffolk County, New York, awaiting trial. The Gilgo Beach murders, they became national headlines more than a decade ago when multiple bodies were found. In fact, 11 sets of human remains were discovered along that shoreline. Now, in July, police arrested 60-year-old Manhattan architect Rex Heuermann, who was charged for the murders of 3 women, Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, and Megan Waterman. He is also the prime suspect in the death of a 4th woman, Maureen Brainerd Barnes. He has pled not guilty. He is being held without bond. And as this investigation progresses, we are learning new developments that may impact this case. So let's talk about what impact they may or may not have. I want to bring in right now a fan favorite here at Sidebar. You already know who I'm talking about. Evidence expert and Edward D. Albaum, professor of law and director of advocacy programs and clinical legal education at Temple University Beasley School of Law. Professor Jules Epstein is back with us. Professor, so good to see you.
Great to be here, and thanks as always for your doing this.
Absolutely. I want to start off with potential witness testimony. And when I talk about these updates, it's not like they happened yesterday. They happened relatively recently, but you and I have not had the chance to talk about it. So first, Suffolk County Sheriff Errol Toulon said that jail staff has interviewed 141 sex workers and at least 12 women, inmates who worked as sex workers, claim to have had interactions with Rex Heuermann. Now, the sheriff said they're still working to verify these claims, but these potential witnesses are actually in the same jail as Heuermann. And we've told everybody before on Sidebar that Heuermann was reportedly this serial user of sex worker services. But now, Jules, the idea that they're interviewing these people, how do you verify their accounts and that they may have, had an interaction with Heuermann?
I have no idea. I don't even know what that means. In other words, if I'm a sex worker, did I keep a phone number? That would be verification. Did I keep some record of places I went to? That would be verification. Did I at least habitually pick up men or get picked up at a particular location? Maybe that's verification. I'm not saying any of these women is lying. We have no way that I know of to objectively tell, they're right.
And that's fair. And look, I think it's important to establish here, verifying that their actual accounts and seeing what that means and whether or not their description of Heuermann is accurate or the recollection is accurate. But assuming for the moment they have a collection of witnesses who said, no, I'm 100% sure I had these interactions with Rex Heuermann, what value would that have to prosecutors at his trial?
So a judge would have to rule that in a case where he is alleged to have picked up 3 escorts and then murdered them, that his using other escorts, right, sex workers, is somehow probative. In other words, it helps to prove, well, gee, if he went with other sex workers, it's slightly more likely that he went with these, and balance that against what kind of a picture is it painting of this guy who, put it in the way a jury might see it, is a lowlife cheating on his wife whenever he can. So we call that balancing the value or the probativeness against the risk of unfair prejudice, of just making him look like a lowlife. And then people saying, well, if you're a lowlife, you're bad. If you're bad, you're more likely a murderer. Well, I guess you did this murder.
Right.
That's always the tension
Mhm.
when we bring in acts outside of those that a person is charged with.
All right, we want to thank Morgan & Morgan for
Let me get
sponsoring
rid of
this
this
video.
commercial,
I
guys.
think it's
Hold
pretty
on.
clear from the stories that we cover that it is not always. Now, Mr. Toulon said that we still haven't been able to validate those claims of those women that said that he was violent and aggressive. Suffolk County Sheriff says that his sex trafficking unit has gained the trust of other escorts. They're expanding now into Nassau County. But again, everything has to be validated and checked upon. I do want to now move on to this potential other witnesses because NBC Dateline has spoke with a number of people. And the first one I'm going to mention in this vein is Nikki Brass, who is a former escort who went on a date with Huerman 8 years ago. This is according to her. And according to her, he started talking about his interest in true crime and specifically brought up Gilgo, saying how the bodies could have been transported with burlap. Remember, and that's a weird thing to say because camouflage burlap was used on the bodies. But she went on to say his body language, the way he spoke about it, it wasn't a true crime buff. It was somebody who was there. There's a big difference. You can just see it. You can tell, like, his entire demeanor changed. I told people for years, I said, I swear to God, I went to dinner with the Gilgo Beach killer. People kind of laughed off like, yeah, right, okay. I'm sure you did. So that's taking that all is true. Is that, how valuable is that in a trial against Huerman?
Prosecutors love to show that someone is looking up news articles about a case or fascinated by a case or focused on a case. And we've seen that in more than one of the cases you and I have talked about. Here, it may have a value exponentially greater, and that's the word burlap. If someone says, yeah, I'm sure they were wrapped in burlap, and that's no body has yet been discovered, or said differently, if the bodies have been discovered, but the burlap fact wasn't public knowledge, that's eerie insider knowledge.
And of course, we have to be careful. We have to always take these accounts with a grain of salt because somebody could be looking at the information that we know today and using that to say, oh, I remember I was with him, and of course he talked about burlap. We see that in a lot of times, high-profile cases. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that's the case with Miss Brass, but that's why law enforcement always has to vet these claims to make sure somebody is not just saying something here. But I do want to go now. I was very curious about these other accounts. Again, NBC Dateline interviewed two people. It seems almost like character evidence, and I don't know if it's really important, but you have Catherine Shepard, who was a former colleague with Rex Huerman, said he was nice, he's professional, and even when she slipped and fell on ice, he took her to the hospital, picked up her medication. She did say, though, that there was one odd incident when he was renovating his house. She went to check it out, and they were in the basement, and he said, you can't go in there with respect to one of the rooms. He told her that it was because he had a bunch of guns there and children around, but and remember, police did recover 300 weapons in there. Then you have this neighbor of Huerman's, Jimmy Mack, in Massapequa Park, where Huerman lived, who said he got into an altercation with Huerman only a few months before his arrest. This was over Mack's truck being parked halfway onto the sidewalk. Huerman was outside of Mack's house, said that he was going to slash the truck's tires. I thought that was, these two accounts, well, kind of interesting from a story perspective about who Rex Huerman is or is not. I don't know how valuable it is in the case against him.
So let's start with the easy one, the neighbor with the truck and I'll slash your tires. There is no way that should come into in a criminal case on murder. When I teach evidence law to my students, I say, when somebody wants to bring in something else you did, you have to ask, is the only message, oh, did it once, did it again? In other words, he's violent towards a neighbor. I guess he was violent towards these women. I see no basis for that. unless the prosecutor could come up with a theory, and it's a theory, right, that the investigation was closing in, Uerman knew it, he's getting more agitated. That's a stretch. The coworker thing could help the prosecution or the defense. A criminal defendant accused of a violent crime is allowed to present what we call character testimony, that he or she or they, whoever it is, doesn't have the character of a murderer. So if I'm charged with murder, I would call people to say, I'm nonviolent. I'm not sure you can get there by saying, I helped you when you fell on the black ice, or you helped me, right? The prosecutor's angle is a little different, that he was hiding that room. And whether it's hiding it because of the guns or guns plus burlap, I don't know. But as a prosecutor, I might at least want to explore the you can't go in there evidence for someone who's there to do a job to help them.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Stepping away from the murder cases, the three women that he's actually charged with, and we'll go back to that in a minute because there's a piece of DNA evidence I want to talk to you about. We also know that one of the other questions that's been circulating is whether Uerman is connected to the unsolved deaths of reported escorts Shannon Gilbert and Karen Vergata. Her remains were actually found in Fire Island. Well, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison said that his team is interviewing 4 new potential witnesses. I'll give everybody an idea. So there is a livery cab driver who provided sworn testimony that she picked up a crying, shaking Gilbert from a motel bathroom as a man who fits the description of Uerman jumps into his car and leaves. You have another witness who's claiming that she and her boyfriend were swingers and went to Uerman's home with Vergata, and they engaged in sexual activities. So I'm listening to these potential accounts. I'm listening to the idea of police interviewing these people. Is this significant to you? And how do you think that this investigators and prosecutors may use it?
We have to work backwards here. A judge would have to decide that evidence that he was with 2 other women who disappeared and then were found to be dead is probative in the case of the 3 women victims who he's charged with and not unfairly prejudicial. I think that would be a really tough call for a judge either way. It certainly completes or expands the story. But it's saying to the jury, you have to take a few leads. Women are dead. He was with them. Other women are dead, right? There may be too much of a missing link there to let it in.
So that's with respect to that, to the current case. But in terms of whether or not he's actually going to be arrested for Vergata and Gilbert, I mean, does that evidence seem significant to you?
Sure. Again, anything that says I actually had contact with these 2 victims is important.
I really wanted to get your perspective going back to the 3 victims he's currently charged with. The DNA. We did a whole sidebar on this, and I really want to get your perspective on it. So this was a big recent development, and that was that the DNA of Uerman's estranged wife, Asa Ellerup, matched DNA that was found on the victims. This comes from law enforcement sources, multiple reports.
Her DNA.
Investigators had originally said that Ellerup was linked to hairs found on the victims' bodies. There were 2 female hairs that were found on Megan, one on the tape used to wrap her head. There was another hair found on tape inside of the burlap wrapping around Amber, and another female hair on a belt buckle used to restrain Maureen. Well, now they have confirmed a DNA match to Ellerup. The reporting indicates that the DNA that authorities took from a cheek swab of Ellerup matches the hairs. At the time of this recording, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office has not confirmed the report of the DNA match. And I should tell everybody that Ellerup has not been criminally charged. Investigators say she was out of town when the women disappeared. She's been cleared of all wrongdoing. But we know that they took the cheek swab when Uerman was arrested. Overall, Jules, what do you think?
We need a 1-minute science lesson.
Okay.
You have hair, there are actually two kinds of DNA. If I were to pluck a hair out of my head right now and we got the whole root, you would get what's called nuclear DNA. And that's the same kind of DNA that if you took a swab or,
Blood.
I bled at the scene or left some of my own skin there somehow, that where you'd get that incredibly powerful DNA profile. But sometimes when hairs come out, we don't get the root. So we just have the, if you will, the stalk, the rest of the hair. In the rest of the hair is something called mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is not as precise as nuclear DNA. It shows what's called matrilineal heritage, that my mitochondrial DNA will link back to my mother and my mother's heritage. And therefore, my brother has that mitochondrial DNA, and so can some other people with some degree of relationship to my family or other families. So we don't know which kind it is. If it's nuclear DNA, it's incredibly powerful. How did his wife's hair get on that tape? Unless they were in his house or he grabbed the tape and took it, something like that. If it's mitochondrial DNA, it's still tremendously powerful. You don't need one piece of evidence that guarantees it's Uerman. You need pieces of evidence that are like pieces of a puzzle. This narrows the universe of people who could have contributed that hair. And coincidentally, one person in that very small universe is his wife. That's really powerful evidence.
On top of the fact that his DNA was connected to the crime scene as well, which is just a huge piece of evidence. We've gotten into that before about the pizza box. And look, I think that's a significant part. The fact that they are confirming it. They had suspicions. Now they're confirming it based on cheek swabs of both him and his wife. Very significant development. Before I let you go, Jules, there's this other update that I got to get your perspective on. So we talked about how this evidence relates to the actual 3 murders, but we've talked about Uerman potentially being connected to other killings. Well, there's this other update that's very interesting, and it concerns Alicia Showalter Reynolds, who's a woman that was killed in 1996 out in Virginia. Her car was found abandoned on the side of a highway with a white napkin under the windshield wiper, and her body was found 2 months later in a shallow grave. Now, the murder has remained unsolved, but Showalter's siblings say that an old state police sketch of the murder suspect looks like Rex Uerman. Showalter's brother, Dr. Patrick Showalter, told Pix 11 News, "When I saw the picture of Rex Uerman, subtract 27 years from the way he looks now, it's the first time I've seen anyone look like any of the composite sketches that were done at the time of my sister's abduction." Showalter's sister, Barbara Johanssons, also told Pix 11, quote, "The similarities are striking. The eyes and the cheeks, the face structure. I'm very curious what you think about that, identifications through composite sketches like this."
So unfortunately, composite sketches are generally not real accurate. None of us has a perfect memory of a face. There's not a camera inside my head that goes click. And Jesse, if I were looking at you, I'd have your face there and I could keep going back and looking at it. And a composite sketch is often done where the police are saying, well, here are a bunch of noses, right? Which nose is it? And that process of looking at multiple noses can alter the witness's memory. So that's part one. So we can't assume that a composite sketch is a real accurate capture of what the perpetrator looked like that 20-something years ago, 26 or 7, I guess. Number two, even if it's close, I'm not sure that we have the science yet to be able to take Uerman's face and subtract 27 years from it and then say, okay, that's the guy. So it's interesting.
That's a shame.
I'm not
They got
saying
to
it
get the
is a
DNA off
lead
for.
police should not ignore. I'm sorry, should ignore. Right? They shouldn't ignore it. It's a lead.
Mm-hmm. Every lead, you got to take
I
it.
don't think they should run off with the assumption that, oh, yes, it was definitely Uerman, who apparently had family something like 50 miles away from where this murder occurred. So it's interesting what you can do with a cold case. Maybe there's DNA from there. Lord knows it's worth checking.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Definitely.
It's not a home run.
Well, it's interesting because this brother and sister of Showalter say they Huerman's mother had lived in Virginia in 1994, so it would have been outside the possibility for him to be there. And Barbara Johansson has said, I would like them to look at the DNA evidence again and see if there's any sort of correlations now that we have all these new tools with genetic databases. So, but that, look, Jules, that really helps. I think we've gotten a good perspective of what we should take away from some of this new evidence and some of this new developments. So thank you so much for coming on, sir. Always appreciate your insight.
Thank you. And again, thank you and your team for the in-depth coverage you bring to these issues.
Appreciate that, Jules. We'll speak to you soon.
And there we go,
And that is
guys.
all we have for you here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe on Apple.
Unbelievable, guys. Here we go. Intense. That is an intense video from Jesse at Sidebar. Right on key. I mean, so let's talk about a couple of things here, guys. Let's chat. Johnny Guns Investigates. Hit the like, subscribe, and let's chat about this. This has been going on for a long time. A lot of witnesses are popping up now, and that's well known to happen. I mean, this guy is definitely noticeable. He's a guy that you're never going to forget. Once you look at him, you encounter him, you're going to remember this big guy. He's a big guy. So they have over 140 women that they're going to go ahead and question inside the Suffolk County Jail. So we're going to come back on that and see how many more of these girls can go ahead and prove that the story is true. We have to have proof. You have to have proof. You just can't say, oh, I had dinner with him. I had a date with him. He took me to his house. We have to have times. We have to have proof of that. It just can't word of mouth. It doesn't happen. And then now the wife. Guys, I said this from the beginning. That she's a swinger too. She's involved in that type of a lifestyle with Rex. She wouldn't have married him. Rex has been like this forever, since the day that she's known him and met him in that swinging type of lifestyle. She was involved in it. She liked it. They brought people to the house to have these parties. She was involved. I believe, okay, this is just me, okay, allegedly. This is my opinion, Johnny Guns Investigates opinion. She knows what this man is. She knows. She knows he's capable of hurting these women, or has hurt these women in the house, because she was there the night that the girl ran out, Karen Vergata running out of the house, screaming for help with her clothes off. Is that a normal activity? His wife knew about that. She knows what he's up to. She was involved. Now the hair samples and DNA found on these murdered victims. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Let's chat. Is she involved? Are they going to make an arrest on her? Or are more things going to come out? I believe there is. Let's chat, guys. And now going back to not just to DNA, but also in Virginia, as they talked about where his mom lived. He had his family in Virginia for over 20 years ago. Now, this guy was killing back then. I mean, allegedly, he was. The instincts just didn't happen. I guarantee you he had involvement with that missing girl in Virginia. over 26 years ago. If they can just pull up the DNA and get some DNA samples on that, that might uncover a lot of things. Because as I've been saying, a lot of other murders are going to tie into this crazy alleged serial killer. Okay, and we know that's going to happen. So this is all being opened up now. What's going to happen with all these witnesses? I mean, this guy has been preying on these escorts for years and years and years. I mean, how long does it take? All these bodies coming up there in Gilgo Beach, right there in shallow graves. Everything all adds up. Now, we know that his DNA, as they said, is on scene. I mean, they know they have his DNA, but now the wife's DNA is coming up. So there's a lot of different things that are happening in this case. Where is it going to go? Who else is involved besides the wife? Or any of these local law enforcement friends that he had over there in Suffolk County, Brooklyn, anybody else know what kind of a man he is? I mean, you were at parties with him, you hung out with him, you went to the club with him, you picked up other couples to have swinging parties. So, and then this coworker, Mrs. Shepard, Catherine Shepard, his co-worker, who says he's such a gentleman, always polite. When she fell on the ice walking down the sidewalk, he helped her. He took her to the hospital, made sure she was okay the whole time. The strange thing is, why did he not let, when she visited the house and she's in the basement, why does he not let somebody in that room? That's a no-no room. He says because it's of his guns. You know, that could be. He has a lot of guns. He's well known to have a lot of firearms. But why was that room to be always hidden? Was that his sex room? Which I'm sure it was. So, guys, let's talk about this. The Long Island serial killer, Gilgo Beach, guys. This has been going on for a long time. But now, as you know, the longer it goes on and the investigation is hitting, so many more people come out as witnesses, so much more evidence. Now with the DNA, look what the DNA is bringing out. Not only his DNA matching, but now we have his wife's DNA matching. Guys, Johnny Guns Investigate coming to you tonight. Hit me up, hit the like, subscribe. Let's chat about this story and let's see where it goes, because it's a big one. When I tell you guys, this one's going to go down in history as one of the largest serial killers in history, this will be one. A lot more other bodies are going to unfold. But I think he had his partner in crime with him too, his wife. My opinion. Johnny Guns Investigates, guys. Hit the like, subscribe. Let's chat. Let's go, guys. Bring it in. Have a great night. Wednesday, the weekend's coming. Holidays are coming. And guys, remember, the most important thing out there is be safe. Have a great night. Thank you so much for listening, guys.